Famous people who passed away in 1740. Before we proceed, please subscribe to our channel to support us. Nicholas Trot. He was born in January 1663 and he died in January 1740. His age was 77 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an 18th century British judge, legal scholar, and writer. He had a lengthy legal and political career in Charleston, South Carolina, and served as the colonial Chief Justice from 1703 until 1719. He came from a prosperous English family, his grandfather, Parian Trot, having been a husband of the Somers Isles Company, and his uncle, Sir Nicholas Trot, served as the governor of the Bahamas. Like his nephew, the governor was involved in dealing with pirates, and so to avoid confusion, it is often referred to as Nicholas the Elder, though he is best known as recorded in Daniel Defoe's A General History of the Pirates as magistrate who tried notorious pirates Stede Bonnet in 1718. He was the author of several published books. Richard Lumley, 2nd Earl of Scarborough. He was born in November 1686 and he died in January 1740. His age was 53 at the time of his death, and he took his own life. Lumley was a key political figure and soldier, playing a prominent role in British parliamentary and military affairs. He was a British Army officer and Whig politician who sat in the House of Commons from 1708 until 1715, when he was raised to the House of Lords as Baron Lumley. He subsequently inherited his father's title as Earl of Scarborough. At the 1708 British general election, Lumley was returned as Whig Member Parliament for East Grinstead. He supported the neutralization of the Palatines in 1709. He wished to serve in the army, and though not given a commission, he joined the Duke of Marlborough for the campaign in the spring and summer of 1709. In 1710, he voted for the impeachment of Dr. Sacheverell. He also became Vice Admiral of County Durham in 1710. He voted for the No Peace Without Spain motion on 7 December 1711. Pope Clement XII. He was born in April 1652 and he died in February 1740. His age was 87 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was complications from gout. He was the head of the Catholic Church and ruler of the Papal States from the 12th July 1730 to his death in February 1740. Pope Clement XII is remembered for commissioning the Trevi Fountain and his reforms of church finances. Clement presided over the growth of a surplus in the papal finances. He thus became known for building the new facade of the Basilica of St. John Lateran, beginning construction of the Trevi Fountain, and the purchase of Cardinal Alessandro Albani's collection of antiques of the Royal Papal Gallery. In his 1738 bull in Eminenti Apostolatus, he provides the first public papal condemnation of Freemasonry. Frederick William I, King of Prussia. He was born in August 1688 and he died in May 1740. His age was 51 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was the king in Prussia and elector of Brandenburg from 1713 until his death in 1740, as well as Prince of Neuchâtel. Known as the Soldier King, Frederick William I transformed Prussia into a military powerhouse through strict discipline and economic reforms. His political awakening occurred during the Great Northern War's plague outbreak in Prussia, leading to his challenge against corruption and inefficiency in government. He initiated reforms, especially in military, growing the Prussian army significantly. A believer in absolute monarchy, he focused on state development and financial reorganization, imposing taxes and stringent regulations on public servants. He made efforts to reduce crime and centralized his authority during his 27 years reign, cementing Prussia as a regional power. Thomas Tickle. He was born in December 1685 and he died in April 1740. His age was 54 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. Tickle was an Irish poet and essayist whose works were admired during the Augustan Age, and he was a friend of Joseph Addison. He became a fellow of his college in the next year and in 1711 university reader or professor of poetry. He did not take orders, but by a dispensation from the crown was allowed to retain his fellowship until his marriage to Clotilda Eustace in 1726 in Dublin. Tickle acquired the name Wigesimus because of his close association with the Whig parliamentary party. In 1717, he was appointed Under Secretary to Joseph Addison, Secretary of State. In 1724, Tickle was appointed Secretary to the Lords Justice of Ireland, a post which he retained until his death in 1740 at Bath. Louise Elizabeth de Joybe. She was born in August 1673 and she died in January 1740. Her age was 66 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was undisclosed. Louise was a French noblewoman known for her contributions to colonial administration and diplomacy in New France. She is reported to have had great influence during the tenure of her spouse and to have used her influence to promote her friends and hinder the careers of her enemies. Louise was the elder daughter of Pierre de Joybe de Soulanges de Morson and his wife Marie François, who was a daughter of Louis Théodore Charty de Lenobière, an official in the Provost's Court of New France, who has been called father of the Canadian magistrature. Louis and her husband had 10 children in all, one of whom was Pierre de Rigaud, Marquis de Vaudreuil de Cavalier, the first native-born governor of New France. Antonio Lotti. He was born in January 1667 and he died in January 1740. His age was 73 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. Lotti was a Baroque composer whose operas and sacred music left a lasting impact on Venetian and European music traditions. Lotti wrote in a variety of forms, producing masses, cantatas, madrigals, and around 30 operas and instrumental music. Some of his sacred choral works were unaccompanied, but many of them are composed in the concerto style, with strings, basso, continuo, and occasionally oboes and trumpets. His more progressive works foreshadow the Gland style, considered a transition between the established Baroque and emerging classical styles. Lotti made his career as St. Mark's, first as an alto singer in 1689, then as an assistant to the second organist, then as a second organist from 1692, then from 1704 as first organist and finally from 1736 as Maestro di Capella. Matias Buinger, he was born in June 1674 and he died in January 1740. His age was 65 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a German artist, magician, calligrapher, and performer who was born without hands or feet and was 2 feet and 5 inches tall. He was especially noted for his micrography, in which illustrations consists of very small texts. An artist and performer, he traveled all over Northern Europe to entertain kings and aristocrats as well as hoi polloi with amazing feats of physical dexterity and was known as the greatest German living. And little man from Nuremberg, he traveled to England trying to get a court appointment with King George I, unsuccessful. He then moved to Ireland, where he gave public demonstrations in Dublin in 1720 and in Belfast in 1722. He also is rumored to have had children by as many as 70 mistresses. Nikolao Papadopoli, he was born in January 1655 and he died in January 1740. His age was 85 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an Italian lawyer and historian of Greek origin. He was a scholar who extensively documented the history and genealogy of the Byzantine Empire. He studied canon law and became a librarian at University of Padua. In 1726, he published on the history of the university. He had falsely claimed in 1726 that he had seen an entry of Copernicus in records of a Polish nation at the university. In the century that had passed since this claim had been widely published and found a place in all subsequent biographies of Copernicus, but the decorative particulars added by the historian of the Pavian University had been shown to be wholly incorrect and utterly baseless, as shown over 150 years by Carlo Malagola and Leopold Prove. Louis Henry, Duke of Bourbon, he was born in August 1692 and he died in January 1740. His age was 47 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. Louis Henry served as France's Prime Minister under Louis XV, overseeing significant financial and administrative policies during his term. As a member of the reigning House of Bourbon, he was a prince du sang. Louis Henry was the second child and the eldest son of Louis III, Prince of Condé, and Louis-François de Bourbon, the eldest daughter of King Louis XIV and his mistress, Madame de Montespan. Following the death of his father in 1710, he became head of the Bourbon-Condé cadet branch of the House of Bourbon. As such, he was entitled to be known as Prince of Condé, but he used the title Duke of Bourbon instead and was known at court as Monsieur le Duc. After his maternal grandfather died in 1715, Louis Henry became a member of the Regency Council led by Philippe II, Duke of Orleans, the regent of the new minor king, Louis XV. Massimiliano Soldani Benzi, he was born in July 1656 and he died in February 1740. His age was 83 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. Soldani Benzi was a master of bronze sculpture, known for his exquisite works in both small and large-scale formats. He was an Italian Baroque sculptor and medalist, mainly active in Florence, born at Montevarchi, the son of a Tuscan cavalry captain. Soldani was employed by the Medici of his entire career. He first went under the name of Soldani but claiming descent from the family of Bishop Soldani of Fiesole and from the aristocratic Benzi family of Filiena. He applied for and received in 1693 an official letter acknowledging his nobility based on his ancestry. From this date forward, he called himself and is referred to in many documents as Soldani Benzi. Soldani developed into one of the finest bronze caster of his time in Europe. Pietro Oton, he was born in July 1667 and he died in February 1740. His age was 72 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was fever. He was an Italian cardinal and grandnephew of Pope Alexander VIII, who was also born Pietro Oton. He is remembered especially as a great patron of music and art. Oton was the last person to hold the crucial office of cardinal nephew, which was abolished by Alexander's successor, Pope Innocent XII, in 1692. Oton loved pomp, prodigality, and sensual pleasure, but was in the same time kind, ready to serve, and charitable. Pietro was admitted to the clerical, tonsure, and minor orders in October 1689 and was created cardinal deacon in the consistory of November 1689, receiving the red hat on 14th November. The same day, he was appointed to the office of Vice-Chancellor of the Holy Roman Church, which he held till his death. He was also made governor of the cities of Fermo and Tivoli. Andersrudbeck the Younger, he was born in March 1660 and he died in March 1740. His age was 80 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Swedish explorer, scientist, botanist, ornithologist, and rector of Uppsala University. Son of Andersrudbeck, he continued his father's work in botany and architecture, contributing to Sweden's scientific heritage. He traveled to Lapland in 1695, joining an expedition commissioned by the King Charles XI of Sweden, for which his mission was to study nature, the mountainous region in particular. He returned and published Laponia Illustrata, an album of beautifully colored pictures of birds, flowers, and scenery, for which he is best remembered. At the beginning of the 18th century, Rudbeck turned his attention away from nature studies to speculation about the relationship between Sami languages to Finnish and Hungarian. Jean Cavalier, he was born in November 1681 and he died in May 1740. His age was 58 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. Cavalier was the Occitan Huguenot chief of the Camisards. He was born at a small hamlet in the commune of southern France. He led the Camisard uprising against French Catholic oppression and later served in the British and Prussian armies. He organized the Camisard forces and maintained the most severe discipline. As an orator, he derived his inspiration from the prophets of Israel and raised the enthusiasm of his rude mountaineers to a pitch so high that they were ready to die with their young leader for the sake of liberty of conscience. Each battle increased the terror of his name. Bajir I. He was born in August 1700 and he died in April 1740. His age was 39 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was fever. Bajir I was a legendary military leader whose campaigns greatly expanded the territory and influence of the Maratha Empire in India. He was the seventh Peshwa of the Maratha Confederacy. He, after Shivaji, is considered to be the most charismatic and dynamic leader in Maratha history and one of the greatest military generals of his time. He was just 20 years old and already had a reputation for rapid decisions and a passion for military adventure. In 1730s, Bajirao asserted Maratha Thrax rights in Gujarat, defeating rebel Trimbak Rao. In 1731, at Battle of Dabohi, he also engaged in a diplomatic mission to persuade Rajput courts for chauth payments. Thanks for watching the video. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Have a nice day.